Welcome to Promo Insiders, an ASI media podcast that covers the topics that matter most to the promotional products industry. I'm CJ Mitica, editor-in-chief, and today I'm joined by Lucas Guariglia, CEO and co-founder of Rowboat Creative, a creative merch agency based in Chicago. Rowboat specializes in live decoration, and Lucas will discuss the current status and future of activations and experiential branding events. Lucas, thanks so much for joining us today.
Yes, sir. CJ, always happy to connect with you and shed some light on this wonderful industry.
So I think the last time I saw you in person may have been 2019 or 18 in Chicago.
40 years ago.
Yeah, and nothing has really changed since then, as far as I can tell. For you guys though, your company Rowboat was heavily involved in things like live decoration and experiential branding. I think that's the term that you guys use as a part of your business, and certainly something you're heavily involved in before the pandemic. Where do things stand now with that side of your business?
They've been really strong. I mean, honestly, everybody had the hiccups during COVID and trying to figure out what was a responsible move and what was a healthy move, not only for just general consumers and companies, and how companies and our partners wanted to be kind of out there in the world and still bringing their energy. So we had a lot. Well, I shouldn't say we had a lot during COVID, but we had a couple activations even through COVID that were just a little bit more of a hurdle of trying to figure out, how we maintain, responsibility and health and keep everybody comfortable. But it's really continued to scale up from there. I want to say that, the live experiential aspect, we've been in it for I don't know, 10 years at this point. And I don't think that it has necessarily that the bubble has burst, but I feel like it has just become so rampant that I think at a certain extent companies are trying to still think of how do we reinvent the wheel. And that's always been, definitely in our corner of trying to figure out how to do something interesting. So I guess to answer your question, I mean, it's been very strong for us. It's always been something that we've had as a cornerstone of what we do at Rowboat and kind of thinking outside the box. But it's just been a little bit interesting to see the trajectory of where things are going, how companies are trying to react, how we're trying to react, and really just try to keep pushing the envelope just so it's not the same. Everybody has live screen printing at events these days. So how do you really shake it up? How do you make it interesting and a unique experience for everybody?
Well, I guess I'll ask you that question then. How do you shake it up? How do you make it interesting and new and fresh?
So, I mean, that's always the magic question. And I think for us, it really is just trying to think outside of the norm. For everybody, if they're coming to it and thinking we want to do something experiential, if it's being rooted in screen printing or heat press transfers, or even, I mean, we've done live embroidery. So I think we try to come at it from an angle of, here are the typical, everybody's automatically going to rush towards t-shirts or tote bags or hats. And we've done some very interesting activations with Corona. We did something that they were these custom, they weren't poly mailer sleeves, but they were a custom vellum sleeve for records. And so we were trying to figure out how we can do that and how we can still bring that customization aspect to those, which is a little bit different because are you working with screen printed transfers? Are you working with digital transfers? So it's a little bit of a, an uphill battle trying to figure out and do some R&D and testing internally of what actually works. Also, what can be replicated live, how it can happen very quickly, and also uphold over time so that things aren't falling apart. So I think we, as a team, I mean, we just throw everything at the wall. Joe, my business partner, and he's our COO. I mean, we literally are throwing everything at the wall in terms of how do we push the limits? Can we even print on this? Is this something that we can replicate live? I mean, bringing embroidery machines to an activation for Adidas is great, but it's also completely crazy because those machines are so, just delicate, and one thing goes wrong and now the alignment's off, and you have to worry about that and worry about thread breaking, and general consumers not really understanding the concept of production, and you're not in your safe space of your normal production zone where what the humidity is at and where we can kind of control those things. So we really just try to start at step one of let's go wild. Let's throw the most insane ideas out there. Certainly talking about it before internally, before it goes to the client side, because the age-old issue is that clients will come up with something amazing, especially if we're working with a marketing or branding agency or partner, and the end client, whoever it is, Budweiser, Corona, or someone like that, that they've already pitched these ideas. Then they come to us and they're like, "Cool, bring this to life." And all of a sudden, we're like, "Well, that's not really possible." So, and by the way, we have 2 days to figure this out because it goes live. So that's everybody, I think, will attest to that in this industry, that we're the last ones to know, and we're the first ones to be kind of chastised if, why can't you do that, and how do we do it, and too late. You already have the garments, so figure it out.
Yeah, no, certainly. There's always those raised expectations that people in the industry like yourself are the miracle workers who always get it done, no matter what.
Right. Yeah, we're the Wizard of Oz. That a lot of it's kind of a thankless job too. Not that we're in it to be gunning for the thank yous, but it always, every time that we're doing backflips and making rainbows happen, it's always kind of just like, oh well, cool. I'm like, all right, well, you have no idea what happened, to make all of that happen.
Yeah,
Not
right.
that you need to, but it is
Yeah.
kind of what it is.
So I want to take just a minor step backwards. So 2020, obviously things very, very slow, certainly with live events, and probably relatedly live decoration, activations, experiential branding. 2021 and 22, we started to see the return of live events, and I think 22 was a pretty good year later in the year as far as live events go. Now, on your side of it, with the experiential branding aspect, when those clients had those events and were coming back to you, maybe after a year or two hiatus, were they just going for broke right from the start with like the biggest, most ambitious ideas, or was there like a slower ramp up back up because of either lower attendance, cuts in budget, or other factors?
I think a combination. I think that everybody, even during COVID, we had outrageous meetings, about activations that were still sometimes six-figure budgets that people were looking to put together. And we're sitting back and we're trying to figure out, let alone, it's not, we're not in the cash just chase. So we're thinking, especially during that segment of time, what is comfortable for our staff? What is comfortable for general public? Yes, this company, even if they're going to green light this and we're going to move forward with this, are we in a responsible place? Are we going to get backlash for, who's this company bringing these live events here? And now all of a sudden, we've got lines and hundreds of people, and are we the bad person doing something we shouldn't be doing? So those conversations were still really bubbling a lot, even during COVID. They kind of lulled a little bit. Some of them, either just fizzled out or got killed because they realized this is not the good thing to be doing. But I think going into 21 and even going into 22, those conversations are there. But I think that a little bit of the budgeting kind of scaled back a little bit. And I think that we've tried to look at that, and I've certainly tried to look at that in terms of what I was saying in the beginning of like, has the bubble just come down a little bit? What people were really, really gunning towards and fine to say, all right, let's do a six-figure budget on something like this that is a 4-day event or a 4-week event. Has that just kind of scaled back? And part of that, might have been partly just a shift in how people are receiving merch, how people are receiving the live experiential side of it. For us, the live branding is one part of it, and that's kind of the live aspect of it. If it's the screen printing, if it's the heat press, or embroidery, whatever it is. But we're involved in a lot of the other experiential aspect of it too, from the set build out to kind of the concept of, for a brand at Lollapalooza, if they're just going to have a 10 by 10 tent, how do we make that an experience? Maybe they don't even have live printing there, but we're still involved kind of in the fabrication and the ideation and the side of, that whole side of it too. So some things might have shifted over to that where the budget scaled back, and we don't want to allot this to having a full team to be doing live screen printing, but we're still going to activate with the build out of that and how we can execute on that. So I guess to go back to it, they really just kind of ebb and flow, and it's really wild because we see them come in, in the last, in 2022, I'd probably say like between like third quarter and beginning of fourth quarter, we were out really, really heavy. I mean, we were doing stuff in New York and Florida, and we were all over the place. And, it seemed like it was just a really big ramp up again. And then there's a lot more talks for what's going to happen towards the end of the year. And then, Q1 of 23. But then all of a sudden, the last week alone, I've had those meetings and they're like, well, we're going to kind of hold on that, because I think that's always the natural thing. We start talking those numbers, everybody wants to do it. And then all of a sudden the new year starts and everybody's like, well, hold on a second. Let's not just go, dump in the bank right out of the gate. Let's see how things are going to kind of go. So, but that's the nature of the beast. I mean, the event space is completely wild, because we'll have these conversations for months and months and months. And then all of a sudden it's just like, yeah, we're not going to do that anymore. Or it changes and we're going to do something completely different, and now we got to revamp everything. So, I really I think we liken it to just the touring world, where it's like we can be prepared all day long, but all of a sudden something changes in an instant, and all right, well, you've been working kind of fruitlessly for that, but that's the nature of the beast, I guess.
In the event space, have there been permanent changes that you have seen that are going to continue into next year and moving forward?
As far as what, just like how people are approaching things?
Yeah, like their aims, what they're looking to accomplish, how they're looking to do it. Is their scope as big? Are they looking to bring in as many people? Like I think there's so much speculation about what our event's going to look like in this post era. What do you see?
I really don't know. I mean, I think that it's just it's kind of a shot in the dark, because we've seen touring certainly ramp way back up. I mean, I was just having this conversation with my wife, and how huge country music has just taken over kind of the world, and also just the music industry. Yeah. And I mean, predominantly 4 or 5 years ago, where we were just really, really toppled with a lot of rap and hip hop, and that's still certainly there. It really has been replaced by a lot of just big country artists and big production there. So we saw touring obviously scale back during COVID times, and it really ramped back up, and it's there. But I think that the focus in terms of either live events or just in general, people are so, I think, zeroed in on quality. And I think that there was a really interesting thing that happened during COVID, not only for us internally, but also I think just the general population of having the opportunity to really step back, focus on things. How do we zero in on specific things, not only internally for the business, but what are we doing kind of just as people? And I think a lot of companies stepped back and said, well, if we rattle down the numbers, we're spending XYZ on merch. Okay, well, that's fine, but are we getting the best quality of merch? Are we doing quantity over quality? And we've always really been focused on that aspect of it. We can handle quantity all day long and we can deal with it, but I think a lot of the conversations are always, look, if we put a little bit more into this, it's not that all of a sudden we're making 10 times more in terms of our margin and what we need to make. I think we're always just on the front lines of wanting it to be the best that it can be, because we see it from both sides. And Joe and I came from the music industry, and so we've been there to see when a band or an artist has really shitty merch. And you can see that, and now being on the other side of it, on the production side, of knowing that it really isn't that much more dollar value, to say, let's do this, let's do something as with really customized hem tags or woven tags, or just little things that really add to the value, or even the perceived value, to say, well, now as an end user or an artist, you can sell this for probably $10-12 more, and that's pretty considerable over the grand scheme of things. So I think that's been a big focus. Focus on quality, not focus on quantity. If it is something that is a bigger activation, how do we do it so that we're not blowing all the budget? How do we do it so it's something that we can follow it up? Because for us, it doesn't matter to have a one and done activation and we never hear from the client again. I mean, the idea is, how do we do this, and how do we consistently do this? And if you were used to spending $100,000 on an activation, what if we scale that back, and what if we do that as $60,000, but we also scale up a $40,000 other merch program here that has the ability to follow it up, instead of now you've just timed out your entire budget because you blew it on one event, and maybe it's very impactful and successful. But I think that's the name of the game, at least for us, of just how do we keep the cycle moving? How do we keep consistent? How do we stay in front of people? And how do we just keep the ideas fresh and generating new things?
the activation space, I think it's interesting because and maybe an outsider, like or a distributor who's not specifically tied into that space, it's very interesting, high profile, very unique. What's your advice? Is like if a distributor in our industry wants to get involved in that activation space, is it like jump in both feet, or is it like word of caution, high barrier of entry? Like there's lots of things you need to consider. Like what's your advice?
I I guess the first piece of advice is that it can be very stressful because, I mean, I think that we're comfortable coming from a performative background. And so part of this really is the performative aspect of it. And you have to think of every single element that can potentially go wrong. To go back to what I said, you are not in your safe space. You're not, if your dryer goes down during production, all right, that's fine. We kill production for a little bit and we try to figure out what's going on. But
Sure.
in a live event, you've got, hundreds of people that are standing there wondering what's going on. So, first word of advice is just be prepared for that. You really have to think through all the elements. And I mean, we've done it for over 10 years, 12 years, and there's still things that just pop up that you cannot control. So I think just be wary about that, but it's certainly not, there's an uphill curve to it, just like anything, because it's a different element and it's a different setting and it's just a different beast. And I think having kind of gone through it and the regiment of understanding how to set the expectations with your client or with your partner, knowing, the potentials for what can go wrong, because then it's not like, hey, you're expecting 100% perfection for this entire thing, because when that doesn't happen, then they're going to be pissed and then it's not going to look good. So I feel like if you're setting those expectations, go through it. I mean, we've done beta testing, we've done kind of proof of concept even internally, where we were sharing literally a private video link with I think it was Nike, with something with the hand printing jets of really how the flow was going to go. And we did it just in our digital room. We literally just set up what would be kind of the customer flow and the consumer flow, and showing, here's how we should do this. We should have our brand ambassadors that are handing, these customization cards, and how many we really need. And you're somewhat justifying what the budgeting is, because you're saying, okay, well, we need 5 additional brand ambassadors to really manage the lines, to manage people, and to keep everybody kind of engaged. When if things start to take a little bit of a time, if there's some downtime, then people aren't just standing there. And so, I think just go into it. We go into everything kind of full bore, and that's just how we are and how we've always been. And sometimes it well, knock on wood, it hasn't really ever fully blown up in our face, but you just have to be prepared. You're just jumping in the deep end, and so there's some learning curve with that. But no, I think it's a great aspect. I think that there's certainly a lot of value in it. I think that the things that, for anybody who's either afraid of it or just not sure of if you want to do it, you're already doing it. You're already heat pressing things within your shop. You're already printing things. So, maybe don't go full bore into the deep end like maybe we would, but, try it out. Do something with like a swim team, do something at a farmer's market, and try to grab some of those clients. Because a lot of the times we honestly kind of we dipped into it years and years ago because it's something we had already been doing. And the experiential side of it is something that we had been doing kind of as a ghost production company per se. And then all of a sudden, we were having these meetings with these larger clients that were talking to us very candidly about, well, I have to hire this production company, and I have to handle this fabricator, and I have to handle this person. And we just said, not even for the sake of like, all right, well, let's just do more together, but how can we make your life easier? We can do this all under one roof because we've already been doing it. And so a huge section of our Chicago facility is a fabrication area where we do that. I mean, we kind of do the R&D testing of it. Yes, we do our high volume screen printing and embroidery and everything in a different part of the building too, but it's all under one thing. So we can really be, I guess, conscious and control all the aspects of it. So my long-winded word of advice is jump in, because there's certainly opportunity, and those opportunities lead to something else. Even if it's something as small as a farmer's market and you're doing that, you might meet somebody that comes up and just says, hey, I need some other merch. What else do you do outside of that? don't pigeonhole and corner yourself into this is all we do. All we do is live screen printing. I mean, there's some companies that is all that they do, but it's just really one facet of what we do. And I think it's very helpful for us to wear kind of a lot of different chameleon hats because it leads to opportunity.
You said something interesting and something that I hadn't thought of. And maybe tell me if this is true. Like, if you're a music act, a band on stage, you're the best ones. They're not just playing the music. They're working the crowd, right? They're
Right,
engaging. Right. So is that the same thing with live decoration? Are you just printing shirts and bags, or is there like an element of like crowd work involved in it?
No, there definitely is. I mean, we've seen a lot. I mean, I've seen a lot of companies that do it, and are very kind of just mechanical about it. And they're there to do a job, and we're here to operate that way. But I don't think we come at it from that, because it's still customer service. It's customer interaction. So,
right.
A lot of these times for these events, whether they have open bar or they're at a festival or whatever it is, like, people are there to have a good time. This is supposed to be an engaging thing that is bringing that energy. So if you're just there and someone hands you their t-shirt and you print their t-shirt and you pass it on, they move along. I mean, that's kind of the same thing of going to the grocery store, and you're kind of just like, okay, here you go, here you go, here you go. And so I do, to your point, I mean, we try to bring that energy. I mean, that's the point of it to us. That's why we've either been hired or why we're on people's radars of, like, these guys can not only bring the interesting and the creative ideas, they can bring the execution, they can also bring the energy for what it is, and trying to really delve into what is that client or what is that partner in, and what is the vibe that they want. If it's a very stagnant, sterile, kind of corporate environment, and that's how they want it to be read, then we have those conversations. It's the same when we go into, either designing or attacking aspects of merch for somebody, of like, I want to know what your vibe is. Like, what is your demographic? What are we trying to do here? Because we wouldn't be doing, we're not using the same garments that we might be for a grade school that we're using for, a large scale, rap show or something like that. So it's just really just immersing yourself and saying, cool, let's be part of this, and let's really be an extension of your brand, and so that we can kind of bring that energy.
Great. So to wrap up, tell me just about, like, how did business go this year? How are you looking in terms of closing up the year, and what's 2023 looking like for Rowboat and for you guys?
So it's funny. I mean, even before, we were kind of discussing doing this and just kind of sharing some of the content ideas. Yeah. We have our year-end wrap meeting that we do every year. That's actually coming up tomorrow, and we'll do our executive awards, and we'll do some really fun awards and everything. And it really is a time, I think, that we all look forward to, not only because we can do our holiday party and everything else, but it's a time when we can all of a sudden pick our heads up, I think, from the battle. And I have my head down for what seems like 14 years through 1 year. And I think that we're all collectively like that, where, it's somewhat of a little bit of a flaw and a blessing too, because we just do so many things that we don't even have a chance to celebrate some of the big wins. And so we just got back, kind of what our year-end numbers look like and our projections for 23. Really excited about that. I mean, we're up, not only the important parts, I guess, for us. I mean, we're up about 20% in terms of revenue. I mean, over the last 4 years, the number is completely crazy. I mean, we're up like 2,200% just in general growth, which has been insane. So yeah, I mean, that literally, I had to read it like 4 times, but I don't even, we care about that, and I care about that, but I think the biggest things to us are really focusing in on what we've been able to do as a team. We have the best team. We have the best lean and mean and most efficient team that we've ever had in the history of the company. And I think that those are the things that mean the most to us. We, starting in COVID, that was a very specific time for us to really look internally, make sure that we're focusing on, what is our internal platform? What does the communication look like between everybody? Because we had the opportunity, with things slowing down for everybody, all right, let's use this time to really work on ourselves and figure out what that is. And I mean, Joe's been working really tirelessly to be able to do that. We made the switch 2 years ago to Printavo, and it's just been a game changer for us. And being able to really work inside of that and try to figure out just the efficiencies of how we get more efficient, not only for our customers, but realistically for us internally. So numbers have been really great for us. I mean, we've had some really, really big wins. Kind of on my totem pole of things, we did a really big production run for corn this year. which like between Korn and Deftones and Tool have always been the highlight of, I think after we hit the trifecta of that, then I'm retiring. But
remind our audience, by the way, Korn, not the crop, Korn the band.
No, Korn, yeah, Korn, the I guess heavy kind of new metal band, but we're all kind of big fans of that, so that was a really cool thing. But and as far as 23, I mean, we're kind of in the same lane. Let's just hit the ground running, but very much really focusing still internally. I mean, we do what we do. We've been very, I think lucky and blessed to be continually be able to do what we do and have such a great team. So I want to just continue doing what we do. Part of that is just putting the blinders on, keeping our head down and stay in our lane and kind of just continue to do what we can do in the production aspect, but also like this stuff. I mean, as long as you and I have known each other, whatever in terms of the collaborative writing or contributing writing or stuff that I can do just to shed some light on it. Because even when we first started, I mean, we were the new kids when it was just, t-shirt forums and message boards. And now, we're part of so many different things, and there's so many great expos and, conferences that are just watching the industry and the people that were the new kids on the block 10 and 12 years ago that now really have a little bit of notoriety because we've had some success, but also that we're still here and we're trying to educate people, and we want to be there as a resource for any of the newcomers that either are just, getting into it and saying, how do I do this? Where do I even do this? Because I feel like we almost had nobody at a certain extent just to do that. And that's part of why I think we're just trial by fire and just, I don't know, jump into the deep end, we'll figure it out.
And just to be clear, new kids on the block, not on your totem pole. I'm not sure you turn down the order.
No, I don't know if we've ever, when they had their like resurgence, I don't even know. I don't think that we ever had like an ask to do any production for them, but yeah, that would be kind of interesting.
Well, Lucas, congratulations on all your success. I'm glad to hear that Rowboat's doing very well, and thank you again for sharing your time and your expertise with us.
Yeah, appreciate it, TJ. And anything that we can do to continue to push the industry.
All right. Well, thank you everybody for listening and watching Promo Insiders, and have a great rest of your week.
Thank you.
All right. I'm gonna